So, you're interested in buying a chateau in France, but did you know there's actually different sorts of architecture for what people think of as French chateaus? Through the ages, chateau architecture has actually changed quite a bit, and if you know which sort of chateau you're actually looking for, that will save you time and also give a good impression to any of the agents you contact. So here's a summary of the 5 principal styles you find in French chateaus. Well, let's start at the beginning with the medieval period, which is quite vague as such because the actual so-called medieval period spanned about 1,000 years, from the fall of the Roman Empire through to 1492. I never understood how they managed to get such a precise date. Reminds me of a Brian Froud illustration where it stipulates, "One day it was the Middle Ages." How did they know? Anyway, back to the chateaus. So you have the medieval style, which due to the popular pastimes of that period was quite a defensive sort of look. They're often referred to as chateau forts, or literally translated strong castles, which is quite close to the English stronghold. They are quite often built on dominating and awkwardly accessed outcrops, and quite often along the old river frontiers. The myriad of chateaus all along the Dordogne River are very good examples, especially if you take, for example, Castanel and Bignac. They're less than 2 miles apart with almost a direct line of sight. Not that I could shoot that far in those days, but they're on opposite sides of the river, and one was English and one was French. There are a few Chateau Forts on the market at the moment, but you tend to find it's either the complete ruin for a complete rebuild or the fully renovated jobs. Doesn't seem to be much in between the two. For example, we have this ruined stronghold in the heart of a village near Valence in the Rhone Alps. It's on the market for only 190,000, but it will cost how much more to actually renovate it. Moving up a step, we have this medieval chateau in the Périgord region of France, not far from Périgueux, presently on the market with 5 hectares at a price of 800,000. I think this could be a really interesting property. In fact, the next time I'm heading down south, I might even try and get to see it. Then you can go for a fully renovated one, for example, like the Château de Montbrun, which is in the Haute-Vienne region of France. It's on the market with 165 hectares, that's basically 400 acres. It's fully renovated, and it's got the asking price of just under 16 million euros. But you do get a special bonus. In the tumulus just behind the chateau, legend says that Richard the Lionheart's intestines are buried. Why they buried his intestines separately from his head and his body, I actually have no idea at all. Following on from this, you actually have the Renaissance period, which was in the 15th and 16th centuries. A bit vaguer on the dates, but I suppose you could actually argue they've just been reborn, so I weren't too sure. The Renaissance period is the most emblematic of French chateau history. The chateaus were designed using balance and geometry, where the actual symmetry was all important, but also the general wow factor. Even the geographics were taken into account in the design, the lay of the land, where the sun sets, views out over the countryside, but also the gardens, which was a very important part of the whole concept. The Château de Chambord or the Château de Fontainebleau or even Chenonceau are all very good examples of the Renaissance period. You can find different priced examples. For example, this one's set in the heart of a village called Courve-et-Valsery, hope I pronounced that right, which is less than an hour's drive northeast of Paris. It's a complete renovation job, but the outside structure looks in quite good order. Admittedly, it hasn't got hectares, it's a fairly limited grounds there, but it's on the market at 600,000 euros. Next up, we had this chateau, which is situated just 20 minutes away from Angoulême. It's a fully renovated property and keeps a lot of the character from the period. It's set in 46 acres and is presently on the market at 2.5 million euros. And then we have this glorious chateau set in 175 acres of grounds, 1,800 metres square of livable space, fully renovated, and a price of just under 15 million euros. Well, it is less than 45 minutes drive to Paris, so. Following on from the Renaissance, we had the Baroque period, which was fairly short-lived because, according to one expert, it lasted from 1675 to 1725, so just 50 years. But a lot of the experts tend to spread it out over a good century. Baroque chateaux are characterised by their opulence and their grandeur and their theatricality. They often feature elaborate ornaments Lots of curved lines and ornate staircases. The most famous Baroque chateau in France is the Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte. Some will argue that it is the actual Palais de Versailles, but the Palais de Versailles in fact is a mix of Baroque and Neoclassical. I would like to actually show you some examples of Baroque chateaus on the market, but by their nature they tend to be very much oversized, imposing buildings and with price brackets which go with them, and thus that sort of market tends to be very much out of the public eye. And following on from that, we have the neoclassical style, which started in the mid 18th century through to the first half of the 19th century. I like to think of it as a simplification of the chateau architecture, less flamboyant, less imposing. The neoclassical style reminds me very much of the old Roman temples as such, where the symmetry was important but not too flash as such. The Château de Malmaison near Paris is one of the best examples of this architecture in France. On the market at the moment we have, for example, this complete renovation project composing of a neoclassical chateau, its own abbey and a massive big outbuilding, for want of a better term, set in 125 acres close to the town of Saintes on the, let's say, mid-western side of France. And this is presently on the market at just over €1 million. Then you have this one near Chantilly, set in 33 acres of grounds, and this is on the market at just over €3 million. Or even this one with all its outbuildings, set in over 30 acres of grounds. Once again, very close to Paris. It offers a total of 255 rooms, 11,150 metres square of livable space. That's just shy of 120,000 square feet. Imagine what you could do with all that. Well, it's on the market at €4.7 million if you've got any ideas. Following on from the neoclassical in the 19th century, we went into the Gothic revival period, or neo-Gothic as the French say, which is probably my favourite, but then again, I was a bit of a goth when I was a youngster. The style was based on the Gothic cathedrals from the Middle Ages. That's why they called it the neo-Gothic or the Gothic revival, sort of revamped in the 19th century. The Château de Pierrefonds is probably one of the best examples actually in France. One of the best examples I know personally is a place called the Château de Nedo, which is in the Morbihan department of Brittany. This was sold in 2013 for around the 500,000 mark, completely renovated and sold a few years later for 1.2 million. These days I'll be guessing it's probably worth somewhere between 4 and 5 million, if not more. Here is one actually on the market at the moment near Cognac, on the edge of the Charente River. It boasts 33 rooms, but it says it only has 6.5 acres. But included in that there is a private island on the river, so maybe the land size is wrong, or maybe it's a small island. It's presently an asking price of around the 3 million mark. Here's another example of a neo-Gothic chateau near the town of Giverny. Giverny, if you don't know, is where Claude Monet spent his last years. Anyway, it's set on 27 hectares, it's fully renovated, and is on the market presently at around 3.7 million euros. Another common style you find is what the French call éclectique. Say that 3 times fast with a mouthful. There's still eclectic. But it's basically a hybrid or composite, or even a mishmash of all the other styles I mentioned earlier. I won't show you any examples of this one on the market because the list would just be too long, because in fact probably the majority of French chateaus on the market could be classed as eclectic. But they reckon the best example of an eclectic castle is the Château de Monte Carlo. Well, Monte Carlo is a bit of a melting pot of opulence, so well, no surprise there. So there you have it, my roundup of the principal architectural styles of French chateaus. If you got this far, you know what to do next. Click that old like, subscribe and bell button down there. If you found this video helpful, you can even buy me a coffee using the QR code up here. And I'll speak to you soon with more videos about French chateaus and French real estate.